Running at night was Sarah's favorite way to unwind after a long day. She loved the feeling of freedom as she jogged through the empty streets, guided only by the moonlight. But one night, that freedom turned into a nightmare she could never forget. As Sarah started her usual route, she noticed a shadowy figure in her peripheral vision. At first, she dismissed it as a trick of the darkness, but the figure seemed to be following her every move. A chill crept up her spine, and her heart quickened. Fearing that she was being followed, Sarah picked up her pace, hoping to lose the mysterious pursuer. But the faster she ran, the closer the figure seemed to get. Panic set in as she realized she was not alone in the desolate streets. Terrified, she turned into an alleyway, hoping to find a shortcut to her home. But the walls seemed to close in on her, and she felt trapped. The figure emerged at the entrance of the alley, its features obscured by the darkness. Her instincts urged her to scream for help, but no sound escaped her lips. The figure drew nearer, and Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She tried to run, but her legs felt like lead. Just as the figure was about to reach her, Sarah's body suddenly felt weightless, and she felt herself being lifted off the ground. She floated above the alley, helpless and paralyzed with fear. The figure finally came into view, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Its eyes were hollow voids, and its features were distorted, like a creature from a nightmare. It reached out with long, bony fingers, and Sarah felt a cold, clammy grip around her ankle. With a sudden jolt, she was pulled back to the ground, her body crashing onto the hard pavement. The figure loomed over her, its face inches from hers. Sarah could feel its malevolent presence, suffocating her with fear. In a desperate attempt to escape, she mustered all her strength and crawled away, not daring to look back. Adrenaline fueled her, and she ran as if her life depended on it. But the figure continued to pursue her, always staying just out of reach. Her lungs burned, and her legs screamed in pain, but she refused to stop running. She didn't know how long she ran, but finally, she stumbled into a well-lit street. The figure vanished into the darkness, leaving Sarah trembling and gasping for breath. She never jogged at night again, haunted by the memory of the unseen pursuer. To this day, she wonders if it was a malevolent spirit or a figment of her imagination. But she knows one thing for certain: the darkness hides unimaginable horrors, waiting to prey on unsuspecting souls. For months, the locals warned Jack about the old hiking trail that wound through the dense forest. They spoke of eerie occurrences and strange disappearances, especially for those who dared to jog along the trail at night. But Jack was a skeptic, dismissing the tales as mere superstitions. One moonless night, he decided to challenge fate and jog along the haunted trail. The darkness enveloped him as he ventured deeper into the woods. The wind rustled through the trees, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As Jack ran, a faint glimmer caught his eye. He halted to investigate, revealing an old rusted lantern lying on the ground. Curiosity got the better of him, and he picked it up. To his surprise, the lantern flickered to life, illuminating the path ahead. Feeling unnerved but determined to continue, Jack pressed on, guided by the lantern's dim light. The trail seemed to stretch on endlessly, the trees forming sinister silhouettes in the darkness. Soon, he heard the faint echo of footsteps behind him. Fear gripped his heart, and he quickened his pace. But the footsteps persisted, growing louder and closer with every passing moment. He turned, only to find the trail empty behind him. Unease settled in, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling of a presence lurking nearby. The lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows on the trees. He knew he should turn back, but an unseen force seemed to push him forward. The forest came alive with eerie sounds, whispers in the wind, and haunting cries that echoed through the night. The lantern's light waned, leaving Jack in almost complete darkness. Panic surged within him, and he tried to retrace his steps, but the trail had vanished. With each step, the woods grew more sinister, as if they were closing in around him. He felt a cold breath on his neck and turned to find nothing but darkness. The lantern flickered one last time before extinguishing, plunging him into an abyss of black. The forest seemed to taunt him, its haunting cries growing louder, closer. Desperate to escape, Jack ran blindly, branches scratching his face and thorns tearing at his clothes. He stumbled over roots and rocks, but he couldn't stop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he burst through the tree line and found himself back at the entrance of the forest. Gasping for breath, he glanced back one last time, but the trail was gone, as if it had never existed. Shaken to his core, Jack vowed never to return to the haunted trail. But the memories of that night would forever haunt him, a chilling reminder of the sinister secrets that lurked in the darkness. For years, the small town of Maplewood had been plagued by rumors of a phantom jogger who roamed the streets at night. Locals spoke of a figure dressed in dark clothing, its face obscured by a hood. Some claimed to have seen it vanishing into thin air, while others whispered about its malevolent intentions. As Mark, a newcomer to Maplewood, set out for his nightly jog, he brushed off the tales as mere folklore. He had always been fascinated by the supernatural, but didn't believe in ghosts. Confident in his skepticism, he jogged along the deserted streets, but as he ventured deeper into the heart of Maplewood, a feeling of unease settled in. The air grew colder, and a thick fog enveloped the streets. Ignoring the warning signs, Mark continued his jog, trying to convince himself that it was just his imagination. Suddenly, he heard faint footsteps behind him. He glanced back, but the streets were empty. The footsteps persisted, growing louder with each passing moment. Fear gnawed at him and he quickened his pace. No matter how fast he ran, the phantom jogger seemed to keep up effortlessly. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, and he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. He tried to dismiss it as a coincidence, but the figure's presence felt too real to be ignored. As he turned another corner, Mark stumbled upon an old, abandoned house. The windows were boarded up, and the eerie atmosphere sent shivers down his spine. The footsteps behind him grew closer, and Mark knew he had to confront whatever was pursuing him. Summoning his courage, he turned to face the phantom jogger, but his blood froze in his veins. The figure was there, its face obscured by the hood, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Its laughter echoed through the foggy streets, chilling Mark to the bone. With each step, the phantom jogger seemed to grow taller, its form distorting into something grotesque and otherworldly. Mark tried to run, but his body refused to move. He was trapped in the phantom jogger's malevolent gaze. As the figure closed in, Mark felt an icy grip around his throat, suffocating him. He gasped for air, clawing at the unseen force, but it was futile. Darkness engulfed him, and the last thing he heard was the phantom jogger's haunting laughter. The next morning, Mark's lifeless body was found in front of the abandoned house. The townspeople spoke of the newcomer who had fallen victim to the phantom jogger, but the truth of that fateful night remained shrouded in darkness.